There is a corridor somewhere in Miami International Airport where the 2026 World Cup quietly broke. It did not happen on a perfectly manicured pitch, nor did it occur during a high-stakes press conference or inside a corporate boardroom where media executives argue over broadcast rights and multi-million-dollar prize allocations. It happened in a sterile, nondescript transit hallway where a 34-year-old man from Somalia sat for 11 hours, facing aggressive questioning about a militant organization he has absolutely nothing to do with, while the global tournament he had spent his entire professional life preparing for kicked off across North America without him. His name is Omar Artan. Before analyzing what UEFA did next, before dissecting what FIFA said, and before evaluating the boycotts, walkouts, legal complaints, and the institutional earthquake currently reshaping world football, it is necessary to confront exactly what happened to him. The rest of this unprecedented structural crisis only makes sense if you understand the gravity of what was at stake for a single human being on the morning of June 10, 2026. Omar Artan has been on the FIFA International Refereeing List since 2018. He is not an amateur or an unproven official. He refereed the second leg of the highly prestigious CAF Champions League final during the 2025-2026 club season. He was officially named the CAF Men's Referee of the Year for 2025, identifying him as the absolute best officiating talent on an entire continent of over 50 nations. Because of this elite track record, he was selected by FIFA from a global pool of thousands of officials as one of just 52 referees trusted to command matches at the most watched sporting event on earth. He arrived in Miami on June 6th carrying an official diplomatic passport, his formal FIFA tournament accreditation, and a completely valid, approved entry visa. He possessed every document he was legally required to have. He had earned every credential he was supposed to earn through years of athletic excellence. Yet, immigration border agents immediately pulled him aside into isolation. For 11 grueling hours, the questioning continued. The interrogation did not touch upon his distinguished sports career, his pristine officiating credentials, or the historic tournament he had flown across the Atlantic to serve. Instead, it focused entirely on Al-Shabaab, the militant terrorist organization operating in parts of Somalia. For nearly half a day, one of the most qualified football officials on the planet sat in a secure room and answered repetitive questions about a violent extremist group. When the interrogation ended, he was not released to his tournament hotel. He was placed directly into a holding cell. Shortly thereafter, he was forced onto a flight back to Istanbul. The official explanation subsequently issued by regional border authorities cited generic vetting concerns. Because Somalia is one of 39 nations subject to specific heightened travel restrictions, that classification alone was deemed sufficient to override everything else. An official diplomatic passport was insufficient. Formal tournament accreditation from FIFA was insufficient. A legally vetted and issued visa was insufficient. 8 years of unblemished service on the international refereeing list was insufficient. Being crowned the absolute best referee on the African continent was insufficient. Direct selection by the highest governing body of world sport was completely insufficient. Vetting concerns, that is the sterile, bureaucratic sentence that single-handedly destroyed Omar Artan's World Cup dream before the opening whistle even blew. The reason the entire football world is reeling from this incident is not merely the tragic mistreatment of Artan himself. It is the explosive institutional chain reaction that followed. Specifically, it is the fundamental disparity between how FIFA reacted and how UEFA reacted. The massive philosophical distance between these two responses has rapidly become the defining story of the 2026 World Cup. When the tournament officially opened on June 11th, the global press corps descended on Miami. Cameras were flashing everywhere, and billions of viewers tuned in. The FIFA president, the man who sits at the absolute apex of the organization that selected Artan, placed his name on the official roster and aggressively marketed this World Cup as the most inclusive, welcoming, and progressive tournament in human history, was asked directly about the deportation of his elite referee. His response, delivered casually to the media during the opening hours of his flagship tournament, consisted of exactly 4 words: chill and relax. That is what the leadership of world football offered to a catastrophic operational breakdown. There was no public commitment to launch an immediate administrative review. There was no acknowledgement of what those 11 hours of detention and subsequent deportation meant to a human being who had sacrificed his entire career for that specific moment. There was no statement addressing the gaping chasm between FIFA's heavily promoted humanitarian values and the harsh reality his tournament operations had just produced. He simply told the world to chill and relax. Crucially, almost simultaneously, within hours of that dismissive statement being broadcast globally, a completely different document was being carefully drafted in Salzburg, Austria. The president of UEFA was preparing to release an official corporate statement, and the stark contrast between the two approaches was neither accidental nor coincidental. It is the clearest possible expression of a profound institutional fault line that has been quietly fracturing world football governance for years, which this specific airport incident has finally broken wide open. UEFA's public statement did not hide behind administrative neutrality. It explicitly stated that Omar Artan is an excellent, young, but highly experienced referee who has repeatedly proven his capabilities at the absolute highest competitive level within the Confederation of African Football. The document went on to remind the world that football is fundamentally designed to connect human beings rather than isolate them. Then, UEFA delivered the sentence that carried the true geopolitical weight of the crisis, doing something far more significant than merely offering a displaced official sympathy. The statement declared that UEFA wanted to publicly show its profound respect to Omar and his outstanding officiating skills, which had earned him such a prestigious nomination. Analyzing that phrasing reveals its true intent: to explicitly reference the prestigious nomination that was denied to Artan at Miami International Airport was a direct, deliberate, and public challenge to the entire World Cup infrastructure. UEFA was not simply offering a symbol of charity. It was stating, with the full institutional weight and global authority it possesses, that the FIFA selectors who chose Artan were entirely correct, that the vetting concerns cited by border authorities were completely divorced from sporting reality, and that European football was prepared to prove it publicly by handing him the biggest, most visible stage it had available on its continent. The stage chosen for this correction is immense. UEFA officially appointed Omar Artan to referee the 2026 UEFA Super Cup, featuring a monumental clash between Paris Saint-Germain and Aston Villa, the reigning Champions League winners against the Europa League winners. It is the prestigious, highly anticipated opening match of the European club season, scheduled for August 12th in Salzburg. By walking onto that pitch, the man who was detained in an airport corridor for 11 hours will make history, becoming the first referee from the African continent ever to lead a major UEFA final. While the UEFA appointment was historic on its own, the secondary reaction it triggered from the leadership of African football reveals exactly how deep the systemic damage within FIFA truly runs. The president of CAF did not issue a carefully worded, detached diplomatic memo. Instead, he publicly, warmly, and personally thanked the UEFA president by name. He stated clearly that Artan had made Somalia and the entire African continent immensely proud. He explicitly acknowledged the original World Cup nomination as undisputed proof of Artan's world-class abilities and the immense international respect he commands. He then thanked Alexander Cheferin in emotional terms that made it undeniable this was not routine corporate courtesy. It was the president of one massive continental confederation expressing genuine personal gratitude to another for stepping in to provide justice exactly where the sport's apex global body had failed. Such a public alignment between the heads of European and African football does not happen under normal operational circumstances. Global sports governing bodies are traditionally hyper-careful with their public statements. They do not typically call out the overarching world organization through direct implication, nor do they express gratitude to peers in ways that explicitly highlight the failures of the institution above them. But the 2026 World Cup is no longer operating under normal circumstances. This extraordinary exchange between UEFA and CAF, executed completely over the head of FIFA, represents an unprecedented geopolitical realignment. It shows two major continental confederations actively coordinating, speaking, and executing policy in a manner that frames FIFA as an empty vessel, an absent, indifferent institution that should have protected its own people but chose to look away. Structurally, the implications are severe. FIFA possesses absolute legal authority over the World Cup cycle. It controls the selections, commercializes the tournament, and dictates the moral framework of the event. Yet, when one of its own hand-picked elite officials was publicly humiliated and deported, FIFA offered nothing but a casual evasion, leaving it to UEFA and CAF to restore the man's professional standing and deliver the justice he was owed. Meanwhile, the human cost of this corporate indifference was being laid bare in Mogadishu. Thousands of ordinary citizens gathered inside a stadium, not to watch a football match, but to welcome home a referee who had returned with his life's dream shattered. They gathered to show him that his community saw what happened to him, that he still possessed immense value, and that his country would not look away even if world football's leadership did. That packed stadium in Mogadishu is the real-world reality of what a four-word dismissal sounds like from the other side. The crisis surrounding Artan does not exist in a vacuum. It is merely the most emotionally legible and highly visible flashpoint of a broader, systemic pattern of administrative hostility that has plagued the entire build-up to this expanded tournament. What the world is witnessing is the rapid acceleration of a coordinated, multi-institutional revolt against FIFA. The data points are everywhere. The Iranian Football Federation has formally accused FIFA of abruptly revoking its entire supporter ticket allocation just days before their opening match. Simultaneously, 14 high-ranking Iranian sporting officials were completely denied visas to attend their own team's matches. In a separate, highly volatile incident, a prominent Iraqi striker was detained at the border for 7 consecutive hours, while federal agents systematically inspected his personal phone, while a team photographer was summarily deported. Furthermore, a Bahraini football official discovered his European travel authorization was flagged and placed under an indefinite review just 10 days before kickoff. Beyond these severe border and immigration conflicts, the tournament is facing intense legal challenges on the domestic front. European supporter organizations have filed formal anti-monopoly legal complaints, accusing FIFA of predatory, abusive practices regarding its ticketing system. While the governing body boasts to media outlets about processing an unprecedented 500 million ticket requests, the evidence on the ground demonstrates that ordinary, traditional fans have been systematically priced out and excluded from accessing matches. This deep internal fury has already spilled into the highest chambers of football governance. Earlier this year, 8 prominent UEFA delegates staged a coordinated walkout during an active FIFA Council meeting. A walkout of that magnitude is not a standard political protest. It is a declaration by the representatives of the most powerful, financially dominant football confederation on earth that sitting in the room with FIFA leadership is no longer a legitimate use of their time. Concurrently, high-level documented discussions regarding future boycotts are actively occurring among 20 separate national federation heads. These are not unsubstantiated media rumors. They are serious internal conversations between association leaders questioning whether continued participation in future FIFA-governed events is even remotely consistent with the human rights values their own federations claim to defend. This is no longer an isolated operational controversy. Multiple distinct institutions, representing different countries and facing completely separate operational issues, have all arrived at the exact same conclusion through independent processes. This expanded World Cup is not being managed in a way that reflects its stated values, and the institutions of the sport have a moral obligation to respond with direct, decisive action rather than passive press releases. For decades, FIFA's crisis management playbook for handling political or operational friction has been incredibly consistent. The strategy dictates that leadership should vaguely acknowledge concerns, make sweeping references to its formal human rights framework, emphasize that immigration and border decisions are made exclusively by sovereign host country authorities rather than sports governing bodies, issue a boilerplate commitment to ongoing constructive dialogue, and immediately move on to focus on match statistics. That legacy playbook is now completely failing. The contrast between what FIFA publicly preaches and what FIFA operationally executes has become far too visible, too documented, and too deeply personal to be smoothed over by corporate jargon. An organization cannot tell the global public that everyone is welcome while simultaneously telling its own workforce to chill and relax when an elite international official is locked in a holding cell and deported. The moral mathematics of that equation no longer add up, and the global football community can see it clearly. On August 12th in Salzburg, Omar Artan will walk out onto the pitch to command the UEFA Super Cup. At 34 years old, he will have spent his entire summer watching a historic World Cup from the outside, a tournament he earned the right to officiate but was forced to view on a television screen. He will carry the memory of sitting in a secure room in Miami for 11 hours, boarding a forced flight home without the professional milestone he spent his youth working toward, and standing inside a stadium in Mogadishu, surrounded by thousands of his countrymen who gathered simply to ensure he felt seen. When he blows the whistle to start the match between Paris Saint-Germain and Aston Villa, his presence will represent a profound structural shift in the geopolitics of the global game. This historic outcome was not planned by any tournament organizer. It exists exclusively because when an airport in Miami closed a door, an immediate phone call from Salzburg opened another. The institution that made that call with genuine conviction, rapid speed, and zero political hesitation was not the global governing body of the sport. It was UEFA. Beyond the immediate drama of August 12th, this moment signals an entirely new era for the power dynamics of world football. UEFA's decisive intervention demonstrates that the moral authority to enforce the values of the sport no longer belongs exclusively to FIFA. It belongs to any institution possesses the courage and the structural will to exercise it. On June 12, 2026, UEFA exercised that authority. CAF publicly validated it. 20 national federation heads began actively discussing the systemic implications of it, and 8 international delegates walked out of a council room over it. FIFA remains the formal governing body of world football, and its legal authority over the World Cup infrastructure remains absolute. However, raw structural authority and genuine institutional legitimacy are not the same thing. Authority is merely a function of legal contracts and corporate monopolies. Legitimacy must be continuously earned through consistency, the unyielding protection of the people the institution claims to serve, and responses that match the gravity of human suffering. What FIFA is losing in real time across this tournament is its fundamental legitimacy. The speed, precision, and historic weight of Omar Artan's UEFA appointment serves as a permanent statement that when the institution at the absolute top fails to uphold the values of the game, other organizations will step forward to claim them. History is carefully writing down exactly who spoke, who acted, and who looked away, and it does not forget.